In this episode, I get a chance to interview my friend and a student of mine, Navneet Mann, who she has amazing energy. She's up to big things. She went from this career of being a burnt out attorney to really getting in alignment and blending Eastern and Western practices together to give people more wholeness, more stability, more strength in their lives. So stay tuned. I'm Adam Kadu, and it's time to master the art of real heart alignment, where you live, work, and play from your personal power as energy aligns, your gifts flow, and life simply works. These life-changing conversations are designed to help you to see what you're not seeing, hear what you're not hearing, and to be who you're not being, as the world needs more heart-centered leaders now more than ever. Are you ready to say no to living a half-hearted life and say yes instead to boldly living from a place of real heart alignment? Welcome to the Adam Kadu podcast. Yo. Welcome back to another episode of the Adam Kadu podcast. We've got a very special guest today, Navneet Mann. Now, Nav and I have been working together for a little over a year or so. She's in my Heart-Centered Selling Mastery program, and Nav recently won a VIP day with me. Her and I got the chance to work together very closely to really fine-tune her message, take a look at her offers, and just look at her business from a whole new lens. You know, Nav at one standpoint was an attorney, and she realized, and what you'll hear in this episode, she was in this place of working so freaking hard for other people, and it was actually jeopardizing her health. And you can take the same standpoint, the same approach to look at your life and business, even as entrepreneurs, is what are the constraints? What are the boundaries that we box ourselves in with that are really burning us out? And Nav went from this place of burnout and frustration. And even when she left her job as an attorney, she still had this energy, feeling like she needed to work so hard and she needed to push and strive and struggle for every little thing. But she had this awakening through doing her spiritual practices, her energetic practices, to allow herself to see what she wasn't seeing so she can now get in alignment. And now her business is rocking. She's up to big things. She's helping more people. And she just has some of the most amazing energy you would ever be around. And without further introduction, I welcome Navneet Mann. What's going on, Nav?
Hey, I am good. Hi, Adam. Thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. So Nav is actually a student of mine, a good friend of mine. She's somebody who has impressed me through the years, just her growth and her willingness to, put herself in uncomfortable, situations in order to do the things in a way that's going to allow her to create the life that she loves. And it's been very inspiring watching her just to let go of a lot of the things that were no longer serving her, which we'll get into all that and more in this episode. Before we do that, however, I do want to say there's this kind of like direct connection between Nav and I from this standpoint of I see so much about Nav that I see in my wife as well. Nav was once an attorney. She's no longer an attorney. We'll get into that story a little bit. My wife is an attorney, and I see so much similarities in how Nav was working in the environment she was in and this resistance she was facing. And, sometimes she's, okay with, law and things like that, but other times she's dying inside. And I see that with my wife as well. And it took a lot of courage for Nav to finally make the decision for herself. It's like, look, this isn't my path. This isn't my dharma. This isn't for me. And it took her a little bit to really look at that and to figure out, it's like, look, I've got to make a step. I've got to lean in with courage in order to, separate myself from this environment, because nothing is going to change until I change, and nothing's going to change until she was able to step out from that environment. So we'll get into that a little bit, but Nav, fill us in a little bit, tell us about what you're up to and what you're working on, and we'll just kick it off from there.
You got me in my feels of that little trip down memory lane.
Yep.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay. So like you said, we'll probably get into my story about law and leaving law, but I recently left my career as a lawyer after I think almost 6 years of practice. So I was really in the trenches with that. And Adam, I've known you for a couple of years now, and you've been a big part of my growth as a mentor and a coach. So you've kind of seen this progress for me. So yeah, my name is Nav. I am a former lawyer. I also am a coach now full time. I work with people who have found themselves in a situation in life that they've just worked really hard to achieve and are now in a place where they feel deeply unsatisfied and disheartened because they've worked so hard for this and just don't really have a direction of where to go. They've kind of lost themselves in the process and are now on this journey to rediscover and find their voice and find their power. So that's what I do now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And we were just speaking before this call, and I like to, there's always just nuggets that I'm like, we got to bring that into the show. It's got to come into the show. And she was talking about alignment and just kind of really opening up to what was present to her. And I see so much that she was out of alignment with an attorney, or being an attorney. And even after she navigated away from that, there was some part of Nav that I continued to kind of shine a light on and help her to see for herself that, she worked so hard as an attorney. Like my wife through law school busted her butt. Her dad works his freaking head off every single day, and my wife falls into that mentality as well. It's like, that's the lifestyle. Nav got outside of that and started helping other people who were kind of stuck in the same rut that she was in. They're just working hard. They're having high demands on themselves. They're stressed out and all this. And Nav was focusing on helping them to slow down, to see things differently, to shift some of their habits and their behaviors. And she soon realized that, man, like that's actually creating a lot of work for her. It was almost like a safety net. I was like, well, I know the attorneys and I was an attorney, so I can identify with them. It's kind of the low hanging fruit, but jumping into that would have been so much more work for her. It's like lifting a heavy machinery when you have to, you have the machine to do it for you. And so she quickly saw that and realized that, hey, look, she's speaking more to people now that are already on the path a little bit, but they feel disconnected. They don't feel really integrated and whole. And so that's a beautiful, attribute of Nav, is being able to have the awareness to see that she was kind of heading right back into the slugging it away and, the breaking her back and things of that nature. And she has such a beautiful, expansive, glowing energy about her that would have been doing the people that she's meant to work with a great disservice. So tell us a little bit about that now. Just how were you able to see that for yourself and install principles that allowed you to free yourself up from that, perpetual cycle of, hard charging and working so freaking hard all the time?
Yeah, that is such a wonderful question because you don't realize that you're doing that. It becomes such an innate part of your identity is to work really, really hard, and we live in this society where hard work is rewarded. You're important if you do hard work. And in my industry in law, it was almost a badge of honor if you worked evenings and weekends and didn't sleep and came to the office, and where your life was so revolved around your career, and people appreciated that. You were rewarded for that, right? So breaking free of that identity and that persona was actually really difficult, more so than I thought. I thought the hardest thing was going to be making the leap and the decision to actually leave law. Then I realized, like, holy crap, my identity was so intermingled in this person who I had created. And I didn't even know how to kind of untangle all of that. So, like you said, in this industry, we often say that you are your own ideal client. The old version of yourself is somebody that you can help, which is true. But that version needs to want to be helped. And what I realized was I was trying to sit there and preach and tell my old colleagues and all of these people, like, you're doing it wrong. There's so much more to life than this hard work and hustle, and you don't have to burn out. And I was trying to like pull them out of the mud, and like they were kicking and screaming and didn't want it. And what I realized was it was falling on deaf ears. I was trying so hard to keep convincing people that they needed something different. And we can't do that work for other people. People have to realize for themselves what they actually want, what is important for them. So I believe when you get to a place where it's painful enough and it just is so uncomfortable that something's got to give, that's when you start opening your mind to what else is possible.
Yeah.
In these industries, it's never been accepted to really focus on your internal self or taking care of yourself or your mindset or any of that stuff. It's seen as so primitive and so woo woo, and it's ignored. And I think that's all by design. You know, it's meant to be that way, because if you're not going to question the system, you're going to stay working in the system.
Mm.
So
Wow. And you did. And I love that you share this, and I love your story. Even, I mean, you know, like I said, I see the synergy with my wife's story. But I love that you shared that you actually were on a vacation. You had asked for, you know, time off in advance and all that stuff. And you were guilted, you were shamed, you were kind of berated for taking that time, and the expectations that were placed on you for, yet again, taking time off for yourself. And my wife even says this sometimes. She's like, you know, I'm so fortunate. I get to work with my dad. You know, right now she's pregnant and, you know, not feeling great, you know, sometimes. And so she takes an hour off here and there. And she told me, she was like, if I was working at a law firm, they'd expect 60 to 70 hours, billable, even like 50, 60 hours billable. And she's like, that's just crazy. Like, I wouldn't be able to ask for time off. And there's this expectation in this environment that obviously is rooted in helping people. But I don't think that that's really the underlying thing. It's like maximizing profits and, you know, paying your dues. And that's the lifestyle. And
yeah,
what I want to dig into before we kind of move on from this is, you said, you know, it becomes so painful that it's time to move. But I think that there's also people who have this pain, but they don't really have the awareness that you had. So I want to dig in there, and I'll preface by saying, you know, my wife told me, and early on in law school, it's literally like reshaping how you think, how you view the world. You're looking for problems, problems, problems. You're looking for the disagreement. And it was just wild. There was even times where I would say something to her, and her first word for like 4 months was like, no. She's like, no, it's like this. And I'm like, I was like, that's just what I said, the exact same thing, and just a little bit different. She's like, no. And then she would like repeat it and stuff. I'm like, whoa, okay, I can lose my mind here. But regardless, you had the awareness to be able to see what was going on around you, and to have the courage to step into that. So, and yet again, we could say that others, have that awareness too, but they just don't choose to do that. But they don't have that awareness sometimes. So what was it about, yourself or your past or your habits or anything that allowed you to have this awareness to see, it's like, look, this is out of an alignment. This is not what I'm meant to do. And this is not what I'm going to commit to in this standpoint.
Yeah, there was just so many different factors, Adam, when I think about that. You know, when you ask lawyers specifically, why did you become a lawyer? So many of them, the majority will probably tell you something along the lines of they wanted to help people, right? I mean, of course, it's a benefit to have the status and have the money. But there are a lot easier ways to make money and not have to put yourself through law school and have, 6 figures of debt at the end. But so many people will say that, and that was my story. I wanted to help people, and I really really thought that that's what I would be doing as a lawyer. I'd be an advocate. I would be giving people a voice when they didn't have one. I would really be helping them navigate these waters. When I got into law, I quickly realized it wasn't about the client. It wasn't about helping people, at least not in my experiences where I worked. It was really about filling the pockets. It was about that billable hour. It was about how much does each, associate make me. Therefore, your time becomes the firm's time, right? You better be maximizing on every hour you're in there. You feel guilty having a conversation with a colleague. You feel guilty taking time off if you're not feeling well. Like calling in sick, if I had a headache, I would just come to work, or if I was even feeling sick, because I would make myself even more sick if I was sitting at home not doing my work. I'd be checking my email still, because you better believe that those are going to come in. There are no boundaries when it comes to
Mm.
that stuff. And one of the things that I just wanted to touch on that you said about like how law school shapes you, it really does. And I had somebody, when I shared that story about taking time off and being berated for it, somebody said to me, is like, that's where the system wants you, right? When you look at these types of organizations, they take the high achieving people from society that are really really like interested in like reaching higher heights of success and all of that. So you've always done really well, say in school, you've always been at the top of your class, you go to law school, now whatever, you may or may not be at the top, but then you get into these firms where they're never going to make you feel like you're good enough. They're always going to put you down. So as somebody that has a high achieving identity, you're going to keep working harder to impress them. You're going to keep burning yourself out and working and working and working to finally get their approval. And you're never going to get it, because that's how the system is designed. And that's how they keep people working really hard, you know?
Yeah.
So when you ask me what made me different or what made me have this awareness, I think I started to see these patterns. I was like, wait a second, this isn't about helping people. It's about filling the pockets of the firm. And when I saw that the people I was working for really didn't care that much about the clients, unfortunately, or they were giving work to people that were junior associates that didn't know what they were doing, but you know, the client was paying a lot of money for that type of work. It was just broken. The whole system was broken. And when I was working myself into the ground and nobody was caring about my health, and I started having, literally I was having these breathing attacks where I was gasping for air sitting at my desk. And I didn't even feel comfortable taking time off. So I went during my lunch break to the doctor, who was so concerned. He said, this isn't a panic attack. It's not an anxiety attack. I don't even know what it is, but we really need to get your heart tested right away. So I'm now laying on this examination bed, you know, and I'm wearing my navy blue suit from work. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is my lunch break and I'm getting my freaking heart tested. This is not okay, you know? So having that awareness where I started realizing like my health, my wellness, my relationships are all being impacted. I mean, even thinking about it right now is bringing up those residual feelings, you know, it is. And so many people are dealing with this. So I just thought like, so consciously I knew I needed to change. Like logically I had that done, but like I said, those identities are so deeply embedded that it is so scary to finally make that decision and make any kind of change, even if you know it's best for you.
Yeah. That is, you know, I'm literally getting lit up with chills. Like that is so important for other people to hear. And what I want to take this outside the box of, you know, lower your, you know, life in corporate, because we fall into the same patterns as entrepreneurs and have this expectation on ourselves. We feel guilty when we take time off. And literally I kind of just the 2 days ago, I was like, I'm feeling a little off. I'm going to take some time off today, and I'm going to go on a hike. I'm going to get out in nature. I'm going to connect. And it was like, it took me a good hour and a half to let go of like the idea of I should be working and how's this look and things of that nature. And I'm just like, look, I'm doing this to center myself. We got a baby boy coming like literally any day now. I've got to be able to take care of myself. And so there's still this, you know, and I've practiced this stuff, and there's still this lingering guilt sometimes when we take times off and things of that nature. But let me backtrack to that. So at that point when you were, you know, laying on the, getting some tests done and all that, was that when you started really implementing more of your, and we kind of had a conversation about, you know, just Eastern practices. Was that when you started, you know, getting into more of your, back into your yoga and things like that? Or yeah, what was the story there?
Yeah, no, I think that's when the light bulb started to shine. It was a
Mhm.
little dim at the time, but it was there. It was more of a reality check, I think. I was like, wait a second, this firm doesn't care about me. They only care about how long I'm gone for before I get back in my seat. And I think that's the guilt again, right? No matter what work you're doing, it's like, I don't have time to be sick. I don't have time to be unwell. So I had to go back and reconnect with myself. So it was, you know, you talk about Eastern practices. I obviously grew up Indian. I grew up in a Sikh household with traditional upbringing with my grandparents and my parents. And we we had a lot of conversations around, you know, connecting with yourself. We that was a really common part of our culture growing up. And I think I had gotten so wrapped up in the hustle and like
Mm.
the Western culture and like climbing the corporate ladder, that which there's a place for that type of success, but I forgot all of the foundational stuff I had learned. So I think that's when the wheel started to turn, and I was like, wait a second, I really need to reconnect with who I am. I really need to understand, like, why am I here? What am I doing? What can I bring? What can I bring in this experience that's going to help me? But also, why did I choose this? And I think we forget a lot of those things. So starting to reconnect with myself was the first step. I couldn't even yet think about the yoga and the meditation. I actually
Mm.
started at the time. I remember one of my friends, because she saw I was spiraling, she gifted me a year subscription of a meditation app, Calm. And I loved it. I would only do 1 minute, Adam, like 1 minute of meditation, and my mind would already be spinning.
Mm.
And then I'd feel guilty because I'm messing up my meditation. And it's like always having to be so perfect. But that is when I started that practice, is because I knew I had to slow down up here before my life would start to slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. So you had this moment, which, unfortunately had to come to that to be able to see that. And then you started implementing new practices. And you and I did have a conversation too. It seemed like, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you can elaborate on this, but you started doing a daily practice of yoga and meditation and really honoring that time, because you and I also had this conversation. You were sharing with me that a lot of people, they go through the motions. It's like, I meditated today, check. I did my yoga today, check. I did my self-care Sunday, check. I got my nails done or whatever, but they're not really getting the most out of that time. So you were very intentional about, yoga and meditation. And it seemed like you gained a tremendous amount of personal power in that time.
Yeah.
And that was one of the catalysts for you being able to have the courage enough to say, I'm done. I'm walking away. Right. So fill us in, kind of walk us through that just a little bit and what you were experiencing.
Yeah. So that, like, the experience that I had was a few years back. And then I had actually left law at the time to take care of myself. And that's when I discovered coaching. So it was kind of like this road of figuring myself out.
Mm-hmm.
And then fast forward a little bit to, I guess, 2 years ago is when, you and I met through this coaching world. And that's when I was at this point where I'm like, okay, this is not working. I really need to figure out what I need for myself. And that's when I started to really, slow down and go more into meditation. What I realized was, you mentioned going outside and grounding yourself and going into nature. I realized that those were the moments where I actually felt lighter, where the stress would dissipate, where I could finally like hear my own thoughts and feel my own emotions. So I started making meditation a practice every single day. And I linked yoga with that just to move my body and connect. I realized that we don't do enough of that, right? We're so busy waking up, grabbing our cup of coffee, running out the door. We're always rushing to do something. So I decided to slow down. I decided to just like appreciate the moment and be present. And I'll talk about presence in a second. But so my practice became doing yoga every single day, having a gratitude practice where it's not just checking a box,
Yeah.
It's not just about good for me. I journaled, I did my meditation, but I was really thinking about 4,000 things. The way I see it and what I tell myself every day, this is a gift that I'm giving myself. Whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's 15 minutes, this is a gift of time that I'm giving to me to connect. So I'm not going to, rob myself of this gift by thinking about the 4,000 things I need to do later. Really just being present in that moment. And presence is appreciating that space. And the space can be full of everything or nothing, and that's okay. And I think we don't give ourselves enough of that anymore in this world. And that's where I really, really started to appreciate that groundedness that I was getting. In fact, I got my now husband into it, and together we've done 458 straight days of yoga consecutively.
Wow.
We have not missed a day. Yeah, we both have our own, personal practices that we do, and we're always just, trying to reconnect. But that's the time we give ourselves every single morning. And it's just so important. So he's seen tremendous growth in himself, and I've seen it in myself. So that was something that I brought in to really just feel better. I think essentially first it was about slowing down my brain and like not being stressed out, and then it became such an integral part of who I am. I realized like this time is powerful. Holy, there's so much that I get out of slowing down and just stopping the world, so I can just focus on who I am and be present.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what, you and I talked earlier about the fact that people aren't present in what they do. And presence is actually feeling that moment, right? Bringing all of your energy and your intention in that moment, whether it's for your 1 minute of practice or your hour or 4 hours, as you and I have experienced. It's being able, and that's why they call it a practice. It's okay if your mind is wandering. It's just bringing it right back and becoming focused.
Yeah. And yet again, I love the work you're doing, because you have really, obviously you've lived in the hard charging society, the hustle and all that stuff. So you understand that. And you have experience in connection and, even roots in the kind of Eastern practices. So you're actually taking the best of both worlds, because it's not like, we could just, go up into the mountains and meditate and just, you do yoga all day and that's all we do. But a lot of us, we have this drive to help people and to grow our businesses and to do more. So you're taking the best of both worlds and blending them, where I feel a lot of people get off track is they're compartmentalizing their life a little bit. I've got my business, I'm hustling, and then I've got my yoga time. But no, it's like the yoga time feeds into the business and the business should feed into the yoga time. It's one and the same. It should work together. And you also, talk about this holistic approach. And so when you look at a standpoint of having routines and habits and things of that nature, if it is not from this standpoint of, and I love this too, like I feel like I could I could use some work and guidance around this, is seeing the time I'm giving myself as a gift. Instead of like, I need to meditate now, or it's time to meditate, or it's time to journal, it's time to do this, this is when I do this, it becomes analytical. And I used to have a gratitude practice that literally had no meaning to me for years. I would go down the checklist. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful for the house. I'm grateful to have air conditioning and running water and all this stuff. It meant nothing to me until I really realized that I wasn't connecting and integrating that into my life. So I love that you're helping people with this. So tell us kind of like the difference between a self-care routine and just how you view things a little bit more, if you will. Just break into nuances. Yeah.
I think a lot of these things have gotten very commercialized, so to speak. Like self-care or even mental health, and they've all become these like just buzzwords. And even things like meditation and yoga, it's become cool to do yoga. You see it on TV with like people in like fancy workout gear that are going to these fancy studios, during their lunch to check a box. But are you really getting the essence of what you're doing? Right. To me, self-care is not just about doing the thing. Like you said, that's still being analytical. That's still being like, okay, cool, check the box. Now today I did my meditation. I could go tell people about how I meditate and how I'm a yogi, It's being intentional. Are you bringing that intentionality with you? Are you bringing presence? Are you truly, truly in this moment grateful that you do have this time, right? Our time is limited here, right? So being grateful and being able to spend that time in a way that is completely aligned and feels good to you. And that's why it's a gift. That's why I see it as a gift. I'm not just rushing through my day. I'm trying to really be in that moment, really appreciative of what I'm doing. And that's what I help people do, is bring, like you said, we're not all going to sit in the Himalayan mountains and meditate all day. I mean, that would be probably blissful, but we're not all meant to do that.
Yeah. And on the other spectrum, if you're just hard charging, you're going to end up where you were.
Exactly. Right. We're not all meant to just be like hustling and like on this rat race. So it's like, how do you integrate the wonderful parts about both of these things, right? So bringing in the philosophies behind these Eastern practices that have become more westernized now, that have become more accepted in society, right? Things like grounding, like we hear about these things maybe 10, 15 years ago, it wasn't as common. But like meditation, getting quiet, being outside, taking time out of your day for your mental health and mindfulness, none of that was as common. But let's bring in the essence of why that's important, why all these Eastern cultures have been doing it for hundreds or even thousands of years. Like what were they getting out of it? Because they weren't doing it just to benefit themselves. They weren't doing it because, somebody told them they should. There was something deeper that they were getting out of this. And I think when you can align with that, the essence, you shift as a person completely, right? And with that shift, you get to have a ripple effect on everybody around you, right? Like I mentioned, like my husband now does these practices, and he shows up in a different way for himself and for people around him. Like, just imagine the beautiful impact you get to have through this ripple effect on your family, on your friends, on your colleagues, because you've chosen to really connect with what it means to be grounded or be aligned, right?
Yeah.
These aren't just buzzwords, but then also bringing that part of you now, this really, high, like a person that has developed this practice has higher self-esteem. They believe in themselves more. They have that inner power. And imagine coming from that place and approaching your business. Imagine coming from that place and approaching your career or conflict or communication, right? And it's so much more impactful and powerful. And
Yeah.
I think that's the part that we're often missing when we're just going through the motions of checking the box. Like, oh, cool, I went on a mental health walk, but really you weren't present for that. You were still thinking about your emails or so yeah,
Yeah.
it's a practice. It
Yeah.
definitely takes work.
Yeah.
But it is once you reach that place, then you're never going to go back down that rabbit hole again.
Yeah. Yeah. This is so good. And through our time together, even early on when you were transitioning out of law and really stepping into your own, I've always felt like this more, groundedness and wholeness about you, this strength. And so you're actually breaking into the nuances of how you've been able to do what you've done by being more whole. And literally, we could have the best morning routine. We could read the books on morning routines and all that stuff. We could do the yoga and the meditation and the journaling and the gratitude, all that stuff, but we can still feel empty and disconnected inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that breaks my heart. I mean, obviously, like I don't have this stuff mastered. I'm still on my journey too. I'm a lot easier on myself than I used to be. But there is this disconnection that I feel like is the greatest problem or curse in the world, but it's the greatest opportunity right now because those who are connected and are power centered, feeling whole, those are the people who are going to show up in a certain way to really impact people. It's not about the flashy, graphics or the flashy dance or the newest trends or whatever, the newest strategy, whatever. It's about you. It's about being the best version of you. And if you are unable to get there from just having a routine and things like that, you always feel there's something missing, then that's the work. Like go deep with this work and identify what it is, flush it out, become present to it. And then, start treating them. And yet again, I think that this is just so life-changing to look at these practices, just, one little tip you gave us of a gift, right? Because if we love ourselves, we want to give ourselves gifts. We want to shower ourselves with good things and in the best, right? When most people, if I'm doing it because I feel like I need it or I'm lacking something or that something's wrong with me or because other people do it and they're successful. So we're always longing, we're always striving, we're always feeling like we're missing something. But you
And
help
just
people to
on
center in this. Yeah.
just on that, like just the difference in perspective of like I need this or it's missing or I need that to make me complete, and you're just like striving to fill in that gap instead of being like, this is a gift, it's a part of me, and just that appreciation for what you're doing is just in itself a powerful stance to have, instead of like trying to reach for all the things that you think are going to make you complete, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's a part of this wholeness. And I think what took me a long time to realize was that your wellness overall, whether it is professional, whether it is, mental, emotional, spiritual, all of that is going to is the most important thing, because that is what's going to seep into the rest of your life, right? Like it all starts with that wellness. It all starts with being able to be grounded. And I think we miss that so much in society because, again, we just do the things to check the boxes. Like, oh, I'm supposed to work out and move my body, so let me just do that today. And when you are disconnected from the why you're doing that, and you're missing the actual innate benefit of that thing, then it's gone. There's no point. You've probably just wasted your time and made yourself tired because you're not connected to that, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big part of the work I do, is helping people see this and bring those two worlds together and being able to connect with who they are so they can create the wellness practices that are going to most benefit them. Not the things that they think they're supposed to do because they see it on TV, but so much of our life, I think, stems from our well-being, overall.
Yeah. What do you feel like is at the root of a lot of the disconnect and discord we have for ourselves and just for others right now? I mean, obviously the media and things like that, but what is it more at the core that's really kind of going on here?
My personal belief is it's this external world that has such an impact on us since childhood, you know, like you don't really get a chance to explore who you are because right off the bat you're being told this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong, this is how you should be, right? So depending on your culture, your upbringing, your, you know, societal like status or what have you, you have all of these influences, and I just call that like your societal norms or societal rules that you end up following. And we fall into this trap of if I don't do it right and I don't follow these rules, well, then I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to like, you know, not going to be accepted. And I think there's a time and a place for all of these rules. I think those rules do teach you to be a good person, not to harm others, not to harm yourself and all of that. But if you think about it, these rules were created at completely different times, like not times that we're currently living in, by people and their experiences and their beliefs of what they thought was right. Like, you know, sometimes centuries ago of how we're supposed to be. And subconsciously, we've all just been following these rules and saying, okay, well, I'm supposed to, this is what a successful life looks like. This is what a happy or healthy life looks like. So you just keep blindly following what you think you're supposed to do, right? All of the shoulds, I
Yeah.
think, are what's created this pressure.
Yeah.
And when you're in a high pressure environment, right, eventually something's got to give, right?
Wow.
And that's when people are experiencing things like burnout or just completely like just losing who they are or going through a midlife crisis. Like something's going to happen because you've spent your entire life pressuring yourself to be something you're not, right? It's like I always say, we're walking around wearing this mask in society. And with each different circumstance, you choose what mask you're going to put on. So at work, I have to behave like this. With my friends, I need to look like this. And it's like, it's so heavy, just the weight of wearing that mask and thinking all the time about what you need to say and who you need to be. What if we could just all remove that and just be in our own personal power and be who we are and feel confident with that? And like what a beautiful place this could be is if we are saying like, hey, I see these societal rules, they served me for a period of time, but I have the agency over my life to create my own rules and to dictate how I want to live my life. And you can only get there if you know what's inside, if you know who you are, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
using things like, habits, using our left analytical brain for stuff like that and setting boundaries and understanding what we do want, but also infusing the spiritual side of things and no longer just living in this world of the 3D and seeing life for how it is. And I know yet again, just speaking back to, the whole attorney world a little bit, and I'm sure it's obviously not just attorneys, but, my wife sometimes just questions some of my, spiritual, kind of like thoughts and questions that I'm asking myself and things like that, because she really comes from this place of like life is the way it is and that's it, like what you can see and hear and feel
Yeah.
and taste and smell, that's it, like that's bottom line is it. And I've worked with energy even when I was a kid, like I was just sensing certain things and I was open to things and I was always being told like, you're crazy or you're making things up or that's your imagination or whatever,
Yeah.
to box it in. And we yet again, the environment that we're playing in kind of keeps us in this box a little bit. And it takes people like you to lead this charge and also to provide an environment for your students and the people you're here to help to really immerse yourself in this work from a standpoint of yet again, not just nailing a routine, but getting the richness out of that routine so you can be more whole, more integrated, more in your personal power and everything in between. That's good. So, yes.
Yeah.
We had a conversation earlier in this kind of this term you threw out. I was like, oh wow, that's just like it's fascinating to me, and I'd love to dive into it a little bit. You said there's this emotional distancing going on. I think you were referencing in ourselves and also in the world. So what are some of the things that you do just either from a spiritual practice or a analytical practice to connect, to reconnect? You said you reconnected with yourself. So tell us a little bit else what that looks like. Break that down a bit, if you will.
Yeah. So when I say emotional distance, I feel like there's this emotional distancing that's going on, like you said, with ourselves, because we almost don't want to see this paradox, this gap that is between like who I am and who I actually want to be. We don't want to acknowledge it. So you start to detach from who you think you should be. You start to think things like, oh, that's silly, or you're making that up, or that's not the way society is, right? So you stay in this box. And then the other part of it is the emotional distance from others, right? We start to distance ourselves because now we're not feeling so great about who we are, and that starts to have an impact on our relationships. We're not showing up in the way that, is really true to ourselves. So when you're so caught up in who you need to be, or so caught up in the nuances of your day and the stresses, it's your personality starts to change. I find this with my clients, like they've said this to me, is my husband thinks that I'm a different person now because of all these stresses and the way I'm behaving. And that distance actually starts to impact our relationships, right, with other people. It starts to create a lot of isolation and loneliness, and it starts to have us lose who we are in the process, right? So that's this whole emotional distance that's going on. And I think today in this world, it is so evident, right? We're seeing a lot of emotional distance, difference of opinions are creating all this distancing. It's creating anger, it's creating frustration, right? So there's a lot of really high emotions going on. So how do you come back to that? How do you, first of all, it's about self-awareness. It's about seeing that this is happening. It's about being okay with the fact that this is happening, because you can't change what you can't accept, So once you see it, then you need to be able to say, okay, well, I recognize that there's something going on that needs to be fixed here. And then and only then can you start, acknowledging it and changing it. And a part of that is becoming more vulnerable. It's about being able to open up about your experiences, but also not blaming yourself. I think it's okay to see that this is the way I was raised. These were my beliefs and I didn't know any better. So I followed that. But now that I have this awareness, I can start to make these changes. And the changes come from giving yourself grace, but they also come from being able to accept the things that other people may be reflecting to you, because a lot of us don't want to hear that, right?
True.
So there's a lot of deflection going on. Yeah.
Yeah, true. And it makes me think too, and I've mentioned this on the podcast a couple times since my trip to Sedona, but I really did. I was losing connection with myself. I was losing connection with my wife, and even just kind of retreating a little bit even from my baby boy, which hurts me a little bit to say, because I got
Mm.
so wrapped up in life, and more than anything I was wrapped up in how my wife was viewing the world and how I thought that she wanted me to view the world, and things like that. So I was living my life through her eyes, and I was getting resentful because of it, and I wasn't able to really pull myself away to see until I really kind of sat with it. I was like, what's going on? Like, I'm feeling off, like my body's aching, my body's shutting down. Like, we got to pause, right? Red flag
Yeah.
signal, what's going on? And in that moment, I knew, I was like, look, I need support, I need help, I need to connect with people, I need to talk through some stuff. And really didn't feel like a Zoom call was just going to do it justice, right? I just needed something a little bit deeper. What's unfortunate though is I'm usually pretty aware, but this was building for months, and I didn't, it is what it is. Like, I would have loved to catch it a little bit earlier, to have that awareness in order to see it right away. And I even, like I said, 2 days ago, I just felt a little off, and I felt like I was just kind of checking out a little bit. And so I right away took the time I needed to get back to myself, did what I needed to do, and I'm back. Right. So what took me 3 months at one point took me less than a day here recently. So I think that the awareness is absolutely huge. But then it takes the courage to have these conversations and to do some certain things that we need to do, which is a whole other ball of wax, because like you said, we've been trained to be one way. So
That's the work, right? Like
that's the
that
work.
right there is the work. And you said that you were, it was probably manifesting for a few months, but you didn't really see it. And that's, well, we don't realize is things that are already happening at the subconscious level for us, the frustrations, the distancing, the disconnection, it will it will show up in your body
Mm,
somehow. Like I experienced getting sick, I experienced burnout and all of that, because it's what I always say is that these issues, when they're coming up, or these challenges, it's like a small little knock on the door,
mm,
right? It's like tick, tick, tick. Are you going to let me in and like see what this is? We want to ignore it and pretend like I can't hear that. Then it starts becoming a pounding on the door, like, let me in. There's something here. We're still ignoring it. Eventually, that door gets broken down, and that thing will come and make you stop. It's going to make you see it. It's going to make you like go and fix it. And if you don't want to get to that point, because that's when you're forced to stop, that's when you no longer have control. So being able to, and things like these practices of getting silent and meditating and connecting with yourself, they help you see these things before the door gets knocked down, you know?
Yeah.
They help you have those conversations and open up. So maybe you can say to your wife, like, hey, what, I'm feeling this pressure that you're maybe making me, believe something different, or maybe making me see things through your eyes, and this is how it makes me feel, or what do you think about this? Like, why can't we just open those conversations up? We have this resistance to seem wrong or vulnerable, or even open a can of worms. We're willing to numb it in any way possible instead of actually face it. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
But the work is definitely what happens after the awareness.
Wow. Yeah. That's the work. And I love what you said too about, being more proactive. Because obviously if I was having a practice to where it's not, yet again, just a practice, not just checking the boxes, but really getting the richness out of the practice, chances are two things. One is I catch it earlier. Cause I mean, I really am, taking great care of myself now. I'm moving my body every day. I'm slowing down. I'm reading, and there for a while I wasn't doing my stuff again. So, and I'm really being present in it all. So being able to catch it and have the awareness, but also just even the physiological effect of having this rich practice and being in our power, like you teach your students to do, that is going to allow you to ride through these certain situations to where before it could have almost freaking broke you. And so there's this level of, are we doing these practices to maintain, because if I don't do my morning routine, then I'm kind of cranky or whatever. It's just like we're maintaining, or are we doing it to grow, to evolve, to expand? And that's in essence what you teach people to do. So
yeah, and I think in the beginning it is more about the surface level, right? Because
yeah.
if you're not aware of these things, or if you haven't done them regularly, then it's a little bit about the surface level. Like, if I go to the gym, I might lose some weight. Cool. So maybe that's going to get me through the door. So if I do my morning routine, I know I'm going to feel good for the day. That might maybe start me off. But then you start, like you'd call it, the richness. You really start getting that out of it. And you're like, holy crap, I want to squeeze this for everything, every little drop, because it is beautiful that time. It is amazing what happens in the silence, right? Like just when it's yourself. And something that Brandon Lucero says is like, you don't need to stop and meditate to be silent. You can be silent in a room full of people.
Mm-hmm.
It really is the ability to go inward and connect and assess, just check in. Like, hey, Nav, how are you doing today? How is this feeling for you? And knowing that we have the agency over our life to make shifts when things are not feeling good. And if we start recognizing those on a smaller micro level, then the macro problems probably will not happen as often or as frequently, or will not feel as out of control,
Yeah. And like you said, that's the work. And we've got one to two plays here. Is one, we can either, maybe three, we can maintain, we can, have our practices and kind of just maintain and just ride the life out. Two, we could not do our practices and not get the richness out of it, which could lead to unwanted results with health or whatever else, right? Mental health too. It's not just bodily health, mental health. Or three, you can really take this practice and this work serious, get the absolute most out of it, where it's not just a habit or routine of just doing the thing, but really more about being and expanding your energy and the impact that has on life and business and your experience and all that. I mean, yet again, like you said, that is the work. That is the work. So let's tie a bow on this conversation. Is there anything left that's unsaid, or anything that you want the listeners to know, or just to take away, or even implement for themselves right now?
Just give yourself permission. Like, just give yourself permission to start. You don't have to go and do all of the things all at once. Just know that you're never stuck. There's always a better way. You're allowed to feel your feels, whether those are good or bad, and move through them. You said it yourself, is that you felt a little crummy, but now you feel better. I was the same way a couple of days ago.
Mm-hmm.
So you know that it can get better. So giving yourself the permission to even start exploring. B, just starting somewhere. I think taking that action, small little bits at a time. I think those are the main things. And then C, get some support. Talk to people that are going to understand. You're not isolated as we often feel. As there's always somebody that is willing to understand and help. So find that group for yourself, where you can open up and really be yourself.
Boom. I love it. Yeah. And I mean, as entrepreneurs, those that are likely listening, a lot of entrepreneurs listening, when we are in our business, and if we're solo entrepreneurs, if we have our team and things like that, we're kind of have that mentality to take it on ourselves. It's almost makes me think of the environment you were in. It's just like, I've got to build these hours, I've got to do this. The weight of the world is on you, but just in having support and talking through things, and not just having a dish fest to where it's just like, oh, life is this way and this way, but really just allowing yourself to process. And then when you're done processing, seeing, okay, what's the solution? What's the play here? But more than anything, what I'm taking away from that is find one practice and just go all in with that, to where it's not just, I'm going to do meditation, I'm going to have self-care Sunday, I'm going to have yoga, I'm going to do all the things. And then you're half-hearting doing all of them. Find one to really infuse your heart and your energy and your intention into that, and expand from there.
Absolutely. Like, just find something that feels good to you. It doesn't have to look like anybody else's practice, something that feels good and works for you, because then you look forward to that thing instead of dreading it,
Yeah. Give yourself that gift, y'all. Give yourself that gift. So I love that. I love that. Well, cool. Well, let us know what you're up to. You got any, anything going on, or where can we find you online, or anything?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked, because today I just launched my private mentorship program, where I am working with specifically women who are feeling this way, that are feeling kind of stuck and unfulfilled in their life, are feeling like they're losing control over their health or their relationship. So I'm working really closely with a limited number of women to help develop those practices and really reset all of the stuff going on in their mind. So if anybody's interested in that, you can find more information at navneetmann.com/private mentorship, or just go to my website, navneetmann.com, and you'll find all the fun things that I'm up to. You can follow me on social media. I've been TikToking it up these days. Join me on TikTok or LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, and also Instagram.
Okay, very cool. Well, we will have all the links in the show notes, all easy for you. So definitely, follow Nav. She just has such a beautiful energy about her, and she's up to big things, and she's seeing things that a lot of us aren't quite seeing. So she's going to be able to help us to get even more deep in the work of reconnecting with ourselves and centering ourselves, and really having this wholeness in ourselves, and this wholeness of life. So that's the work. Like she said, I believe it. I know it to be true. So thank you for being here, Nav. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners, just be a little easier on yourself, and find something that's yours, that you can take for yourself, that's really going to give a ROI in your investment in time and energy, instead of just going through the motions. So
yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Adam. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. And stay tuned for more episodes to come. And until next time, go help somebody. The world needs more heart-centered leaders now more than ever. So, all right. Thank you. Talk soon. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Adam Could Do podcast. If you would, take a moment to subscribe and click the bell icon, so that way you get notified when future episodes air. Now, here's the thing. If you are looking for the show notes, you can find a link to those below. If you're looking for the handles of the guests that I've been interviewing, things of that nature, you'll find that here. And if there's anything else that stood out to you in the episode, or if there's anything I can do for you, please leave a comment below, or for sure message me on Instagram if you'd like, as I'm always looking to hear what's working well for you and what caught your interest about the Adam Could Do podcast. So, time to go, time to change the world, time to help more people. Are you ready? Let's go do this thing. The world needs more leaders. So thanks again for listening to the Adam Could Do podcast.